Hi, I'm Chad with Move for a Guitar. This lesson is from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to review the information that we've covered so far in this series and give you some charts that will help tie everything together for you. First off, if you like the diagrams for everything in this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free eGuide, Music Theory for Guitar. And this eGuide will be something that you can study and use as a reference for years to come. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download it. This is part 4.13 from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So we've gone over a lot so far in this series, and we've covered different chord types for each chord of the major scale. So for the 1 chord, the 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, and so on. We covered how to build those chords, why they fit in each of those locations or why they don't fit in other locations. And in this lesson, I want to review it a little bit, but I mainly want to give you some new charts and explain how to read them, because these will be an excellent reference for you to use for years to come. You'll be able to quickly look up the information we've gone over so far anytime you want to once you download the eGuide. So in this first chart, you can see up above we have the 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord of the major scale, up with Roman numerals up here, just like we've had in the other diagrams. But this time everything is read vertically, so we're not looking at this chart horizontally at all. We're just looking at each one of these columns, and the reason I made them different colors is just so you could visualize each column as one unit. So for example, if you're looking right here in this column, this would be all the information that you'd look at for the 2 chord. So I'm sure you can see that what I've done is for each chord of the major scale, I've shown you the different chord types that you have. So for the 1 chord, you have major, major 6, major 7, 6 add 9, major 9, major 13, sus2, sus4, or 5, which is a power chord. So this means anytime you want to play a 1 chord in a major scale key, those are your options. There's more options in this. There's other chord variations, but these are by far the most common, and you'll get tons of use just out of what's in this list. And like I said in other lessons, I didn't get super specific about all the chord names as far as making sure that when you actually played them on your fretboard that each of those intervals was in there. For example, you could have something that's actually a major 7 add 6 or add 13, but instead I was just calling it a major 13. And you can go back and review those lessons if you need to see what I'm talking about. But basically these are your most important chord types to understand or to memorize for each location in the major scale keys. And then you can just go through each chord. So the 2 chord, you have minor, minor 6, and so on. 3 chord, minor, minor 7, so on, all the way to the 7 chord. And the 7 chord only really has 3 that you really need to be concerned about, which is the diminished triad, the minor 7 flat 5, which is your most popular by far, and then another one that you might run across is a minor 11 flat 5. So if we were to take this diagram and put them into a key, we'll put them into the key of C. This is what it would actually look like. So the 1 chord, you'd have your C major, or you could play a C major 6, C major 7, C6 add 9, and so on. Your 2 chord would be a D minor, but you could play D minor 6, D minor 7, D minor 6 add 9, and so on, all the way to the 7 chord, which is B diminished. So using the information that you have when we talked about major scale and major scale harmony, you could just fill in all the information from this first chart. You could take any key and fill it in to go along with these chord types, just like I did in the key of C. So now when you're playing a chord progression or come across a chord in a chart, you have tons of options for what you can play in its place. For example, if you see a C major and it's the 1 chord in a song, you have all these options that you can use. Now, not all these options are going to sound right with the song, or especially depending on what the other musicians are playing in the song. You have to be conscious of that, but technically you have all these options and you can try them out and see what sounds good. Or if you're writing a chord progression, for example, if you're writing a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, instead of just playing C major, F major, G major, you could do C major 6, F major 6, G major 6, or you could do any type of order. You could do C major 7, F major 7, sharp 11, G add 9, and you just have to see if they sounded good together. You know, just try them out and see if they actually sound good. And in the next lesson, I'm going to go over some more popular chord progressions using options from this chart and show you chords that sound good together and just give you some more ideas on that. So the next charts are what I showed before with something extra added in, and that was where we went over the chord name, the formula, common chord symbol. And right now I'm doing it for major chords. That's what's showing on this chart. And you've seen all this before, except I've combined it and I've added another column, which is function. So, for example, your major chord, which formula is root 3, 5, common chord symbol in the key of C is obviously just a C, but the function, meaning what chords from the major scale this will fit in. So it could be a 1 chord, a 4 chord, or a 5 chord. Because as you know, if you've gone through these lessons, that the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord in the major scale harmony are all major chords. So a major chord can function as any of those chords. Or if you look at the next one, major 6, which the formula is root 3, 5, 6. These are the common chord symbols in the key of C. A major 6 would work as a 1, 4, 5 as well. So you could play a major 6 as a 1 chord, a 4 chord, or a 5 chord. Or if we go to the next page, this is the same diagram, just continued so that it wasn't too small on the screen, but in the eGuide it'll all be together as one diagram. If you were to look at the dominant chords, for example, dominant 7, which is root 3, 5, flat 7, that's a common chord symbol, that would only work as a 5 chord. That's the only function it can have in major scale harmony. Same for all the dominants, dominant 9, dominant 11, dominant 13, those can only be 5 chords. Or up here, this major 7 sharp 11, that could only be a 4 chord. That's the only place that these intervals work out, is when you're building a chord off the 4th note of the major scale. So that's just a little bit of review. Obviously we went over all that already. I just wanted to give you this diagram so that now you can quickly look up all this information, the chord names, formula, common chord symbol, and their function. So if you look at a major 13, you'll know that that could be a 1 chord or a 4 chord. And this one is for major, but I gave it for minor as well. So this is the same thing with minor. For example, a minor 6 add 9 is a root flat 3, 5, 6, 9. These are the common chord symbols. A minor 6 add 9 can only be functioning as a 2 chord in major scale harmony, because the 3 chord and the 6 chord don't work out with these intervals. The 3 chord has a flat 9 and a flat 6, so that wouldn't work out. And a 6 chord has a flat 6, so it wouldn't work out. So that's why it could only be a 2 chord. Because as you know, in major scale harmony, the 2 chord, 3 chord, and 6 chord are all minor chords. So the minor triad you can play for any of those. It'll function as a 2, 3, or 6. But for example, a minor 6 add 9 would only work as a 2. Or a minor add 9 would only work as a 2 and a 6. And then I also had the other types of chords, which are neither major or minor, which, as you remember, are the suspended chords and the power chord. And for example, a suspended second is a root 2, 5, a root major second perfect 5th, common chord symbol. That would function for any major scale chord except the 3. So it would work as a 1, 2, 4, 5, or 6. It wouldn't work as a 3 because if you build a chord off the 3rd note of the major scale, you end up with a flat 2. So that's why it wouldn't work, because a suspended second has a major 2 or a major second. And then another example, power chords, just a root and a perfect 5th, as you remember, written as a 5 chord. So if it was in C, it'd be a C5. That would work for every chord in major scale harmony except the 7 chord, and that's because if you build a chord off the 7th note of the major scale, you end up with a flat 5, and a power chord has a perfect 5th. So that's the only reason it wouldn't work as a 7 chord, but this will work as a 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, or 6 chord. And that's because it's just a root and a 5th, and it's not major or minor, so you could use it for a major chord or for a minor chord. So that's just a little bit of review of what we've already gone over. I'm sure you know everything that I talked about, but I wanted to make sure that you can understand these charts that I've written out because they're all going to be in the eGuide, and these will be charts that you can quickly look up this information anytime you need, and that'll be really useful to you for years to come because this information takes a long time to memorize, and it's always good. Even if you have it memorized, you might not be 100% sure, or you might just have forgotten. This is a way that you can quickly look up all this information that we've gone over so far. So I think these charts will be really useful to you, so download the eGuide, everything's in there, and you can go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to go over popular chord progressions using the chords that we've been talking about in this series. So I'm going to show you how the chord progressions that we talked about before can be put together with the chords that we've gone over in this series and come up with more unique and interesting sounds because of that, because you're not just stuck with the triad or a seventh chord. And be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.